Recording, we are live. Good evening. I'm going to call this special meeting of the Board of Finance to order. Time now is 7:04. New business, budget presentations, human services with wCIP. Do we have Mrs. Theodore on?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear and see you.
Okay, that's great. That's a good start.
Good evening, Leanne. How are you tonight?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm better now that I'm listening to you, but I'm going to tell you that you got 3 minutes to summarize the key points of your budget. Roger's got a clock.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I just could, Mike Fauerbeck let me know he's having some car issues, but he will be calling in shortly.
Oh, good. So Mike's coming. Okay, what do you want to tell us about the human services budget?
Okay. I will start by trying to share my presentation, which I emailed to you at the 11th hour, thanks to Roger's assistance. We are having some issues with our tracking system, of course, and I think because of that and because of the SharePoint technology it was built on and the server nearing end of life, this is what happened today. So I seem to be locking up here, so rather than sharing that, I have emailed you all the presentation to review. And I think if there's any questions after that, it just basically summarizes our COVID response programs and the amazing efforts of many of our community partners that I see sitting around at the virtual table tonight, and all of the amazing programs that have come out of this past year, as challenging as it may be. Our unemployment rate right now in Stonington is at 554. This was in December. That is in comparison to 279 in December of 2019. So we're still experiencing a high unemployment rate in town, and the state programs reflect that as well, with 1,737 residents currently on food stamps, the SNAP program, compared to 1,546 the year before. So those are just some snapshot views of where our community is at right now. Just to let you know the number of services that we've been completing with our social services division, we have experienced a 45% increase. So we've gone from services ranging around 5,000 during one fiscal year to 8,634. So that's phone calls, that's applications processed, that's contacts, actual documented contacts that we have made with residents. So definitely I can speak anecdotally that this has been one of the busiest years that I've experienced working within the department and trying to meet the variety of needs that we're seeing come through on a daily basis. As my partners sit around the table, we have also been down significantly with our staff and kind of had to pivot and redirect when it comes to our programs at every turn. Just waiting to see what the next CDC guidelines will be, waiting to see what Legislate is suggesting, and with our recreation division and youth and family services definitely taking a big hit with program participation. That being said, we've spun it back around, I would say, right from the get-go into virtual programming, community offerings like a community scavenger hunt that our recreation division pulled together. And this past fall had about 1,000 participation rate within our virtual and in-person recreation programs. So we're definitely kind of launching back up when it comes to our in-person programming, but it's been a very, very challenging year. And once you have an opportunity to digest the presentation that I've sent to you, and I apologize for not being able to share it on the screen, but as soon as I locked up, I don't want to waste any time. I know we have a lot to go through tonight. You can see just how much effort as a community that we've all put into trying to help our friends, family, neighbors, coworkers get through the past year. Stonington Feeds Stonington program specifically served over 800 households with nearly $35,000 in restaurant gift cards distributed to those in need. That's simultaneously helping local restaurants too with those gift cards that were purchased, all with community donations. We've had some pretty amazing programs come through in the sense of seniors, outreach for seniors in general. We started the You Are Not Alone call program to just do some wellness checking calls. We had a phenomenal partnership with the police department and our first responders this whole time, specifically working with Chief Stewart and Officer Hirsch on her special assignment to really do that door-to-door outreach and wellness checks. For sometimes we'll get a phone call and we don't have the staffing capability to make that happen. And the police department was just amazing in working with us. And as you'll see, as we start to get into our budget a little bit, we do have a new position listed this year for community outreach specialist. And that really ties back into every number I could give you, every statistic I could give you, and every contact we've had this year. Really ties back into the importance of that position and being able to make those in-home contacts and provide more of a personalized effort for those who need it the most. So with that, again, I could go on and read off all of our work that we've done and everything.
Let me ask, before I open it up to the members, this is an incremental position that you're proposing, so that you don't have that slot, but you're proposing to add a new full-time position. Do I understand that correctly?
That's correct.
This person to outreach?
So the title of the position would be Community Outreach Specialist. We had a position that Stuart, who's here from the Como tonight, would recall from many years ago. I want to say ended in around 2002, 2004 area, and it was a domestic violence coordinator that was grant funded and worked specifically between human services and the police department. And that position, yes, it was Deanna Rushlow had filled the position at the time, and it was instrumental in kind of bridging that gap that exists between the police department and between the human services department. We did receive a nice letter of support from Chief Stewart today in support of adding this position to the budget.
He's very inclined towards the position. He supports it fully. It's just that we are, as you say, we have a lot of unemployment in town, and I have concern about adding any new position. Do members have any questions for Director Theodore?
I do, Glenn. It's Lynn. Leanne, what happens when the pandemic is over? Do we still need that position?
Absolutely. So even fielding the contacts that we did in social services and mental health alone from fiscal year 1920, we're only talking about one full-time social services administrator right now, just one full-time person. We've had to pull in other team members who it's not really their job function to do this type of work within social services and mental health and this type of outreach. And we've just kind of pushed and pulled it and made it happen to meet those needs. But we do have a very, very part-time program coordinator who splits her time between senior services and outreach, more along the lines of enrichment and recreation programming and social services. She has been out on unemployment now for the beginning of the end of the last fiscal year. So we're down a person there, and we're also pulling in, as I said, other people right now who it's not really their job function and they're filling in those roles, but to see even close to 6,000 contacts and services conducted within the division last year on one person, it's not feasible. It's leading to a lot of burnout. I can speak for all of us who have been, none of us really had a 9-to-5 position in human services to begin with pre-COVID, but we are doubling our hours in a pay period almost to get the work done. So I would never move something forward knowing the climate we're in right now if we were not in dire straits and really needing that extra person within the office.
Is this person a social worker?
This position is not necessarily required to be a licensed social worker. No, we are looking for a master's level and with the experience really that comes along with what's needed here. This position would not be actually providing direct counseling services, rather just be that liaison to kind of work with our mental health team and with our social services team to better facilitate the services, especially when it comes to services that are being referred to us from maybe domestic violence situations or other situations from the police department or other first responders within our local ambulance services that oftentimes refer clients our way.
Leanne, sorry.
Leanne, this is Jim Sullivan. My understanding was this partly requested because it's somehow ties into the new police accountability requirements and that it's.
Yes, and Chief Stewart could speak more to that, but it definitely goes hand in hand with what's coming down the pipeline right now as it is. So when we just started the conversations with the chief and with Selectman Cheesebro, that was definitely a perk to this, is that as we look forward with the police accountability bill, what will we need to have in place anyway. This position, the way I see it from the human services perspective, is it would be a natural fit for our already struggling department that's overworked and understaffed, and would also add the value to be able to work hand in hand with the police department once the bill is officially in place.
Leanne, it's Deb. Ms. Deb, would they be in the police department offices?
They could be housed at the human services department, depending on what the needs were. If they needed to be, go back and forth, we would have to work that out with the chief at the time, what their needs were, but we definitely have a space. We actually have the technology already existing for this person to start at human services without putting any more expense on equipment or anything of that nature in the department.
Would they go out on ETP calls?
That's ideally. Right now, we work closely with mobile outreach, and they've been working hand in hand with the police department through UCFS, kind of managing those calls that we get in the office that we kind of would like somebody from the police department to go do a wellness check. If we could have one of our staff accompany those wellness checks, that's exactly where we would be going and looking at fulfilling this role. I'd also like to point out, in looking at last fiscal year's budget, we did return a vast amount of surplus to the general fund, and that was based on hours due to programs that didn't run, due to a lot of staffing changes we've had over the past 5 years, where people have retired, other people have started in the position. So we've actually been coming in, if we were to go back and look at how much we've returned and how we've kind of scaled back through the years, even with adding in the cost of living increases and other step increases, that I feel that this is a fair ask at this time.
You said there was somebody out on unemployment?
We do have one person that's out on unemployment, and that was with some concerns that the individual had with some high-risk family members and working in the office setting, and that position was not specifically set up to work from home. It was really an in-person programming position. So as we're not able to do senior services in-person programming right now, we look forward to bringing that individual back on as soon as we can. That position for the person that's out right now, and all of our other program coordinators, come out of what's called the youth program coordinator line, and it's a shared line between 4 different very part-time individuals. It's line number 5 in our budget.
Youth Services Program. Leanne, were we to ultimately fund this as we go through deliberations in the coming weeks at a part-time position, that would still be incremental?
That's correct. All of our part-time positions, we're not looking to move any funding around at this time to replace any of the part-time positions. And we have done that in the past with recreation. We've kind of moved program funding into fund a full-time position. We are not in a position to do that at this time. And looking at our counseling line.
I'm saying if the board were to fund a part-time position, that a part-time position would still be incremental to what you have now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Of course it would be. Absolutely.
We could consider that a pilot program. Because the domestic violence, several years ago, when the PD got a grant for a domestic violence coordinator, that individual worked out of the PD and handled a lot of the calls that, needed that particular service. But that was a grant-funded position.
Correct.
Would you be able to? Oh, sorry, Glenn.
Members have any
Yeah, I have one last question. Would you be able to find a part-time person for that job?
It would be much more of a challenge, which is why we were going the full-time route right off the bat, due to the nature of the work and different individuals that we've had in the past that we've had dialogue with that have worked on our mental health services team had also shared the sentiment that if it was full-time, that we would be in a much better position to have somebody that would also stay. This isn't a position that we want to see somebody coming in and out of or using as a stepping stone to get full-time work. It's something that we would really want to see stay solid and build connections within the community, as well as within our respective teams at the police department and human services.
And Glenn, I got one last question.
Sure.
So Leanne, you guys have kind of been working remotely and whatnot. So the governor today, he opened up restaurants, entertainment venues, all that kind of stuff. When you go back into the office, will that lighten your load somehow or somewhat make it easier for you to do your jobs?
I don't think so. We've actually been very successful at working remotely. As I said, most of us are not 9 to 5 anyway at Human Services, and we're already fully equipped to work at home and do work at home regularly after hours. And we really haven't had any blips on the radar. We pivoted very quickly into remote work. So I would speak collectively for our team when I say that it'll be nice to see faces in the office again, but it wouldn't affect our current workload and the stress that's been placed on the team for quite a few years now. With very few members we have.
So it doesn't impact that new position?
It doesn't, no.
Hi, Leanne. This is Bob Stachin. Just a quick question. Is there any chance, because I could see the community outreach specialist somewhat being in response to a lot of what's occurred and the social impact that the COVID has had on the community. Is there any way we could get funding for this for a couple of years through any of the COVID money that's out there, and then kind of integrate it, and then maybe think to the future about integrating it into our budget in a fuller way?
Sure, we can definitely begin to explore that. Absolutely. And this might be an opportunity to gain some funding for that. Going back pre-COVID times, I would say that this is a position that we could use even prior to March 2020, when everything spun out of control. We get calls on a weekly basis from individuals that could benefit from somebody going to do a wellness check with or without a police officer present. And we definitely get monthly calls from either local ambulance services and the police, COVID aside. It was wonderful to have that partnership with Officer Hirsch and that special assignment as we were going forward through the past year. But at the same time, we really need that on a regular basis, just due to the nature of the services we provide and the work we do.
Yeah, no, and I support it, and I think that, you know, we certainly should be exploring this and looking at this position very, very closely as far as supporting it, because I know you guys are thin there. So I agree with that, but I just think that there might be an option out there, because I think part of it is related and you know, to post March 2020. And so if we could kind of incorporate that, I know some of the funding, you know, going to the schools are because of, they're going to have to get more tutors because of the kids who fell behind because of the pandemic. So this might be another opportunity to get a couple years of funding and then get the person in there and we can see it and then build on that. So just a thought. I think either way, it's something we should explore either way and certainly give very, very serious consideration to. But if there was a neat way to fund it, that would be a plus as well. There's supposed to be a lot of money coming into the state. So something to think
We'll look into that and get back to you prior to deliberations for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. In the recreational line, do you see, Leanne, programming resuming so that the appropriation that I see listed and recommended by the first select woman would be used, or are recreation programs going to be put on hold because of COVID?
Well, just to give you an idea, we did open up recreation programs this fall, and we had over 1,000 participants between different sports clinics that we were running and other just kind of fun enrichment one-shot opportunity camps that we were doing. We have opened up our registration for fall preschool already, and we're full. And this is all with the thought that we'll be able to move forward in this direction. And we've also opened up our flag football registration. We've got a Como rep basketball program, all outdoors, starting again. People are really excited to get back into some type of recreation and enrichment programming. And as of right now, we're still primarily sticking outside, but I see people ready to transition back into indoor programming when that's safe. We have started to transition our programming for our seniors, our fitness programs, into the St. Michael's Church Hall, the new church hall, and we'll also be using the central office gymnasium space, hopefully again at some point. We had some kind of grandiose plans in the works right before everything hit last year. So we definitely plan on moving those things forward, full speed ahead, and working with our partners. We also hope to keep that full-time recreation position on the radar, because again, if you look at our numbers and the increase in programs and services with 2 full-time people, one of those full-time people is primarily just focused on flag football camp and our basketball partnership with the Como. So that's definitely something that we would move forward again next year, and we'll have to wait and see what those numbers look like at that time.
Okay, your Schedule C request I see the tennis courts are the item for
Yes.
human services, and they are an A. We put away 159K. The courts, this number is still good in terms of the complete renovation?
So the number that we had given right from the get-go when we started the process was 600,000. And that was to replace the 6 tennis courts located in Spelman Park with the post-tension concrete rebar system, which would allow us a 20-plus year crack-free guarantee. It would allow for fencing with new windscreens, et cetera, et cetera. The number has since slightly risen as we're starting to get the design plans come in. I was hoping to have something tonight. We just signed on with a consultant. We had voted on a firm through our ad hoc committee, and we're looking for some firm numbers for that. They are very aware with what our budget is. We had set our budget at 600,000 from the start. As of right now, we've committed 43,000 to the firm. So I hope to have, hopefully by the end of this week, if I can get tomorrow or early next week, with some more solid numbers. We're not looking for any bells and whistles at this point. We're not looking, some of the numbers we were coming in had spectator areas outside and landscaping. We're not looking at any of that. We want a safe, playable surface with secure fencing, and especially with the windscreens built in that right now we're having to get up on ladders and kind of roll them up and down, and they're constantly blowing around, and it's just not really a professional scenario when we've got, you know, our high-end ECC team out there and our great tennis program. So I hope to have a much more solid number for you very, very soon, so we can consider talking about that number a little bit more.
Members have any questions regarding Human Services Schedule C request for tennis courts? Hearing none, I'm going to thank Mrs. Theodore for your work, and we will be giving this due consideration as we begin our deliberations of the weeks to come.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice evening, Leanne. Now we'll commence outside agencies. We'll start with the Wesley Public Library. Who's representing the Wesley Public Library?
I am Bridget Hopkins. I'm the executive director of Westerly Library in Wilcox Park. How are you?
I am just fine.
Great.
Glad you're here. Please be brief. We'll get a 10-second warning.
Thank you allowing for me the time for me to speak. It's been nearly 1 year since Westerly Library actually closed its doors to the pandemic. Our Wilcox Park, luckily, never closed. By March 17th, all Rhode Island public libraries had closed. At this point, we were able to waive fines and have not been collecting fines since that date. By April, we really were able to pivot and convert our in-person programs to virtual programs, including our run club, knitting group, film club. By May, we were processing library card applications online and mailing patrons their library cards. We also launched our library takeout, which started May 18th, and that allowed our patrons to continue checking out materials. By June 1st, we were lucky enough to reopen our book drop, and a week later, we actually opened the library by appointment only. And just 2 weeks later, we had to expand our scheduling hours to accommodate demand. We continued with our summer reading program last summer and had more than 200 children participate in the summer reading program. By July 2nd, we expanded our hours again. And September 14th, we actually reopened the library with a limited number of walk-ins, and appointments were not necessary. By October 5th, we were back up to our full 60 hours for browsing only, as well as the use of public computers. We heard fantastic feedback from our from the community members, saying how much they miss the library, miss coming in, and a number of people have said, books are their lifeline, and they were so appreciative that they could continue reading books, checking out movies. And now we're really doing more than ever. This pandemic really made a lot of us very creative and collaborative, and we're doing more than ever. We're making great efforts to provide the communities of Westerly and Stonington with the services and resources and programs and technology that they need to be productive citizens and community members. Some continued services that remained especially important were photocopying capabilities, computer and internet access, iPad and hotspot lending. I know even internet access for
There are probably so many
homeschooling.
things you do that you couldn't enumerate them all in the time that you're allotted. I appreciate all that you do.
All right,
We will
thank you.
give this request our serious consideration. Do members have any other questions for the Wesley Library? Members have any questions for the Wesley Library? Hearing none. The Stonington.
Can everybody who's not talking mute themselves? Is that possible?
Thank you.
What's that? Is that feedback?
Yeah.
Somebody get the microphone live, but they're not on the show.
Oh. Okay. We cut that off now.
Next.
Stonington Free Library. Is there anyone tonight to speak to the Stonington Free Library?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Michaela Hall. I'm the director of the Stonington Free Library, and I am also joined by Carla Umlin, our assistant director. I wanted to start by thanking you for your continued support of the library. The mission of the Stonington Free Library is to enrich lives and build community by bringing information, ideas, and people together. Providing access to every member of our community is a major priority for the library. We serve the entire town of Stonington, and all of our collections and programs are free and open to the public. The library is an essential institution in the Stonington community, providing 24/7 access to information, promoting literacy and lifelong education, and providing a welcoming space for everyone. It is a trusted resource for every member of the community, young to old, and it's a unique provider of essential community services, which would be expensive, if not impossible, for the town to replicate. This past year, we have been resilient in adapting our programs and services during both the pandemic and a major construction and renovation project. All of our programs went virtual, including story times, reading programs, book groups, tech help, our knitting group, and our Sunday evening lecture and Thoughtful Thursday series, and more. We significantly expanded our digital library by adding services such as Canopy, a movie and TV streaming service, and Hoopla, which offers ebooks, audiobooks, movies, TV, music, and comics, and they're all available for free 24/7 from the safety of your home with an SFL card. Residents can also now sign up for a library card online. Viewership of our programs on YouTube and our digital library checkouts increased considerably. When the building was physically closed due to both the pandemic and also our construction project, we established a successful curbside pickup service where all essential library services can be conducted from outside the building. And even now that the building is open and following all safety protocols, we continue on with curbside as a popular option. Funded by our capital campaign, which included a $100,000 SIP grant from the town, our construction and interior renovation projects were completed on time and on budget, despite the challenges of the pandemic. And we are now fully accessible to all with the brand new ADA compliant addition, which includes a ramp, elevator, and bathrooms. And we also now have a high-speed fiber optic internet connection, new flexible furniture and shelving, and more electrical outlets so visitors can plug in their devices. We are deeply appreciative of the town's support of this project and for the municipal funding increase that we were granted this fiscal year. This year, we're asking for an increase of $15,000 from the town, and this would cover direct COVID-related costs, such as increased cleaning protocols, supplies, and PPE, as well as items that have become more critical during the pandemic, like the purchase of tablets, which would be a lot easier to clean and disinfect than our laptops for public, and increased digital library offerings. And our intent to provide these additional services comes in direct response to comments and requests from the public. We have received a great deal of positive feedback from the community regarding how our programs and services have provided a bright spot and a sense of normalcy during difficult times. And we have shared some of these comments with you in the handout. So thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I appreciate your reverence. Do members have any questions for the Stonington Free Library?
I have one. Hey,
Yes,
Michaela,
Lynn.
it's Lynn Young. Has your membership grown this year?
Yes, it has. We now do our cards online. So it's been about the same. It hasn't grown too much. I would say it's about the same
Okay.
with library cards, but also remember that our library cards, the only thing you need with the library card is to check things out. You don't need it to attend any of our programs or anything like that. It's just physical or digital checkouts. You can still come in the building. You can still use our computers. You can still use all of our copying services, faxing, all of that. So the only thing our cards actually count for is if people want to take items physically out or digitally.
But you'd say you're using the library.
So our digital library checkouts have increased considerably. So on the handout that I showed you,
Yeah.
our digital library, it has increased by 270% during the pandemic. So our library cards, if you looked at that, are about the same, but our usage is up in many other ways throughout the pandemic.
Okay. So people needed you during all of this.
Absolutely. And if you, hopefully you got the handout, you'll see all of the wonderful comments we've received from people.
And Michaela,
Any other questions?
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Is the 15,000 for one time or for the COVID related expenses, or is that, so it's a one-time ask?
Yes, that would be related to our COVID-related expenses. Of course, we wouldn't turn you down if you wanted to keep it going for other years, but yes, so we've had, our cleaning in that is doubled really. We used to have cleaning in 3 days a week. Now it's every single day of the week. All the PPE that we have to buy, we've had to set up all the plexiglass, buy all the masks, the gloves, the hand sanitizing wipes, hand sanitizing dispensers, all of our curbside pickup supplies. It's just been a cost that we had not anticipated, that's for sure, as all the other libraries here.
Okay, well, are there any other questions from members? No other questions? Then Mystic Noank Library, is there someone to speak to for the Mystic Noank Library? Mystic Noank?
You're muted.
That's the thing of COVID. You're on mute, and sorry about that. But I'm the new director at Mystic Noank Library, the third of 3 wonderful libraries that serve the residents of Stonington very well. And our experience has been similar to Stonington Free and to Westerly. But there are a couple of things I wanted to talk about with library service during COVID. We've continued traditional library services, but also added some new ones that I think may last beyond COVID. Side pickup, all the libraries are doing that, very popular. People are not so anxious to come in the library to browse. We have a very brisk business and people using copiers, scanners, computers. 1,700 people, well, 1,700 uses of Wi-Fi in February, for the town of Mystic. Really, people are kind of changing the way they use the library. I think the most significant thing that we did, we increased the number of downloadable items. And as Michaela was saying, this is expensive. These movies and books, audiobooks, ebooks are expensive, but the only way many people can use the materials. Well, we offered a one-on-one tech help, both online and over the phone. And that has really helped a lot because, downloading materials sounds so easy, but we all know it's not. Downloading to tablets, phones, it can really be tricky. So that has, let us know that we have to do a little bit more for people other than just put the materials out there. And so we've learned a lot during COVID. We're looking to National Library Week is in April. So we're looking to try to open the library beyond what we're doing now. Right now we're by appointment, and I know that can be inconvenient. Opening up and looking forward to outdoor programs. But we appreciate the support from Stonington. It means a lot, especially during this time with extra expenses, like Michaela said. And we have kept our request the same, okay, the same as it was last year. But anyway, challenging time, but good time.
Members, do you have any questions for Mr. Knowing? Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Goink Library? Okay. I want to thank you very much for your presentation. Now, outside agencies. The Stonington Como. Is there anyone here to talk for the Stonington Como?
Hi.
Would that be?
That would be Beth Stewart, Executive Director of the Stonington Como.
Good evening, Mrs. Stewart. How are you?
Oh, hi, everybody.
I miss you being here in person.
Same here. First, I want to thank you for your partnership and for your support. And I have to give a shout out to Leanne. It has been an absolute pleasure working with her, in particular during this past year of COVID. The infographic that I provided, it's something that, Como has done annually, provides a snapshot of really focusing specifically on COVID and the challenges of COVID, as you can see in the first column, and the Como's response in the second column. And I know I have 3 minutes, so I'm going to be really quick. Just to highlight that first column, during our 75-day closure, we lost over $171,000 in program income. We lost another $70,000 due to canceled events and decreased sponsorships. So this became a total of $240,000 in lost income. The good news, as far as our response, Como has a long history of being resilient, and the pandemic in 2020 and continuing on in 2021, has been no different. We persevered and we reimagined, as many of our colleagues have, taking advantage of that digital world, but also taking advantage of federal funding through obtaining a PPP loan, which we've since had forgiven in 2020. Two key items that I'd like to focus on in column 2 of that infographic is specifically highlighting that our makerspace, despite the fact that we were closed and our income had pretty much shut down, we gathered our young makers and our team and utilized the equipment in our makerspace to create over 300 face shields, PPE equipment for Stonington Ambulance, for Stonington Police, and L&M Hospital. Additionally, we're proud of the fact of having learned that the schools would not be returning in the fall. We quickly recognized the need for our families and proceeded to create a full-day distance learning program, which was a brand new program for us, never mind the fact that it was during a COVID era. As the libraries speak to, the cost of cleaning and such. We are housing on average about 60 children a day in the peak before the children in the area and in Stonington now have started to return to school. And I feel like those two items of pivoting and utilizing our makerspace to create PPE and then turning around and providing this childcare program added 20% reduction in cost to our families to make sure it was affordable, never mind also scholarships. It speaks to our core values as a community service. And ironically, 2020 was actually our 75th anniversary year, but we didn't have that opportunity to celebrate as we would have liked. I'm pleased to share that our tennis and paddle courts have been a place of respite, and as such, our membership has had a 12% increase. That would be 509 households in 2020 that we served, specifically under the membership category. A total of 1,154 unduplicated. So that's not counting children more than once. That would be a child who came every day. So we're not counting that every single day during 2020 or adding another count because they participated in a STEAM or athletic program. So a total of over 1,100 unduplicated youth were served in 2020. This is definitely because of COVID restrictions. Again, being reimagined, we cannot have, we're at 50% capacity. So that has been a unique challenge for us.
Mrs. Stewart, I want to thank you very much. I love the handout that you produced. Very informative, sums up everything perfectly. The Como is a valuable resource for the town, always has been. Do members have any questions for Director Stewart?
Can I share one last item, Chairman Frischman?
What's one last item?
Last item is we provided over $45,000 in program scholarships in 2020, again, despite the fiscal challenges, because we needed to make sure that our families could afford the childcare as well as programming.
Thank you, Beth. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
You do a great job.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, is there anyone here for the Neighborhood Center? Pocketuck Neighborhood Center. I thought I saw Susan Zdansky's name on there.
Yes. Hi, good afternoon. This is Susan Zdansky. How are you?
Good evening, Susan. What would you like to tell us?
I'd like to start out by saying that in fiscal year 1920, we distributed 462,000 pounds of food valued at $771,000. That year, 715 Stonington residents had enrolled to use the food pantry. We've seen an increase in need over the past year. For example, last February, before COVID hit, 657 Stonington residents enrolled in our food pantry. And this February, we have 736 residents. In other words, we're seeing 79 more residents each month who are coming to us for food. Last March, the PNC had 265 active volunteers who worked to distribute food, diapers, personal hygiene items, and pet food. When they followed the governor's directive to stay safe and stay home, the PNC continued to provide all of those items to the community with a staff of 8. We eventually hired 2 additional full-time employees to work in the food pantry. Using the PNC van, the agency delivers food each week to an average of 117 Stonington residents who reside in Stonington housing complexes. In addition, Meals on Wheels are delivered to Stonington homes, and last year, 11,400 meals were delivered to them. The Weekender Backpack program provides weekend food for children each Friday. Today, we have 147 children who are enrolled in that program from Stonington. At Thanksgiving and Christmas, the PNC continued its tradition of providing turkey meals to 400 families, and we gave gift cards to 222 Stonington children for Christmas. Our social service caseworker works remotely to help Stonington residents apply for heating and utilities assistance. And in addition, the PNC Fuel program provides direct financial relief to pay heating bills, and our rental program provides direct financial relief to pay the rent. Our senior transportation program provides rides at no cost door to door for Stonington residents who are 55 and older. In March, we did stop that program and we bought a 12-passenger handicapped accessible bus, which cost $72,000, excuse me. The program reopened, excuse me?
You scared me from the 720,000.
The program reopened in January. And we have an average of 22 Stonington seniors who are using the bus each month to travel to vaccine sites, medical appointments, and shopping. And we expect that number to grow as seniors become vaccinated. I just wanted to thank the town of Stonington and who have helped us immensely, partnered with us to help the most vulnerable of our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Do members have any question for Mrs. Sudansky? Any questions for the Neighborhood Center?
Yeah, Glenn, it's Lynn. I have one. Susan,
Sure.
are things starting to taper off in terms of need? By that I mean,
No.
they're not still increasing, right?
No, we're seeing an increase. People are coming to the pantry. And what we're most concerned about is when the moratorium ends on evictions, we're anticipating people coming to us with more of a need for rental assistance. And even if they don't get rental assistance, they would then probably come to the pantry for food. As you can imagine, most people have never gone to a food pantry before. So you're in a pretty tough situation when you start to have to come down to the PNC. We try to treat everyone with dignity and respect, but we've met many people who really never expected to be at a food pantry.
The hospitality industry in this town has been hurt very, very badly. And that creates a lot of stress. Do you see you're serving North Stonington and Wesley?
Yes, correct.
Now, what does North Stonington contribute annually to the budget?
North Stonington contributes $25,000 and Westerly contributes $11,025.
And the percent breakdown, does that correspond with the contribution?
No, Westerly, for the food pantry, last fiscal year, they were 36% of our population. And I'm thinking, I'm saying this off the top of my head, Stonington, I think would be more like 48%. North Stonington was the remainder.
You could give that number to Selectwoman Cheesebro and she can get it to us. It'd be a good reference point in terms of level of effort.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do members have any other questions for the Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center? Hearing none, is there anyone here to speak for Wesley Area Rest and Meals? Or also the Always Home, formerly MASH.
Yes, hi. This is Betty Smith, the Executive Director of Always Home. Thank you very much for this time to speak with you tonight and for your past support as well. So Always Home, nonprofit located in Mystic, and our mission is preventing family homelessness. Our request this year is level with our request last year. Thank you very much. Last year we had 22 Stonington families that came to Always Home, and we provide all types of services, including past due rent. It could be past due utilities, as well as educational expenses, transportation expenses, etc. Basically, the necessities that are required to be able to keep a family in their home. Those 22 families represent over 72 Stonington residents with their children. And in our last fiscal year, those 22 families also represented about $7,400 in expenses that we paid on their behalf. the expenses are always paid directly to the provider, not directly to the family. All Stonington families that we work with, not only last year, but for many years, have been diverted from ever having to go into shelter or experience homelessness. This fiscal year to date, we have served 8 Stonington families, including 21 residents, with an average payment of about $764 per family. And that has included both rental assistance as well as one family that we assisted with childcare expenses. And this number is relatively low, due to a great part to what Susan just mentioned in terms of the federal and state eviction moratoria, as people have been not subject to evictions due to non-payment of rent. They are less likely to come to us to be looking for assistance. However, as we all know, the eviction moratoria will come to an end, both in the state and the CDC moratorium. And we are expecting and have been expecting, frankly, it's not overspeaking to call it a tidal wave of families who will need assistance to be able to stay in their homes, primarily rental assistance. So we thank you very much. We thank you for the past support and for future support.
Form of vital service. Do members have any questions for Always Home? Any questions for Always Home? Well, thank you very much. We acknowledge the value of the service to Stonington residents.
Thank you very, very much.
You're very welcome, then. PACE of Rhode Island, that's formerly the Adult Daycare Center, which serves Stonington also. Anyone to speak for PACE of Rhode Island? Okay.
Leanne Theater just texted me that Warm and PACE extend their gratitude and for the continued support, but will not be speaking tonight.
Okay, great. The Olean Center? Anyone for the Olean Center? TBCCA? Stonington Prevention Council?
Hello, this is Eugene Theroux.
I'm sorry, who is this, sir? Eugene Theroux. And you're representing who, Eugene?
Hello?
Who are you representing?
I'm representing TBCCA.
Okay, gotcha. And what do you want to tell us tonight?
Thank you for the opportunity for letting me speak on behalf of TBCCA and about the Meals on Wheels program and how we're helping the seniors in your town. We're doing this by providing nutritious, safe prepared meals to homebound seniors. The seniors of Stonington, like most communities, would prefer to stay at home. The term is aging in place, and that's our goal, to help them do that. By providing a meal to someone who is unable to go to the store and buy food, helps to reduce illness, food insecurity, and malnutrition. By personally delivering the meal, we help reduce loneliness and social isolation as relationships are developed with those we serve. In most cases, the delivery person is the only person the homebound senior sees that day, and studies show that a lot of the seniors only see family and friends on average of once a month. And this was prior to the pandemic. Today, we know that that delivery person is the only person the homebound senior sees on a regular basis. The Senior Nutrition Program has revised its meal delivery protocols as a result of COVID-19. Before the pandemic, drivers could visit with the seniors they served, engaging them in conversation, and providing social support along with nutritious meals. Now, delivery staff are required to wear masks and gloves at all times, and to ensure the safety of our elderly clients, meals are handed off and a wellness check is administered at the senior's front door. This allows seniors to be socially distanced while still receiving the nutritional support and human contact they so urgently need in the midst of the public health crisis. Our delivery volunteers are trained to spot changes in seniors' health or cognitive status and to report emergencies or the need for professional intervention. If an elderly recipient does not come to the door or answer the phone, we reach out to the individual's emergency contact and in some cases the local authorities to perform a wellness check. This extra measure of attention provides peace of mind both to the seniors we serve and their families. And this is why Meals on Wheels is more than just a meal. The reason why I'm asking for your assistance is because the Meals on Wheels program is partially funded through the state, and although we ask our seniors for a voluntary contribution to help, we do not require it, and in most cases fall far short of the $3 meal we ask for. The current average voluntary contribution is approximately 44 cents per meal, which is down from 73 cents last year. The funding source primarily pays for the food cost of the meal and the preparation of the meals. The additional funds are needed to help offset the cost of the TVCCA employee that provides the meals to the volunteers that deliver the meals to the seniors of Stonington. Last year, volunteers delivered meals to 82 homebound seniors, which is an increase of 21 seniors over the previous year. This equates to 14,212 meals at a cost of over $99,200. We're fortunate to have 18 volunteers deliver the meals, and they donate in excess of 250 hours of their time to help those in need of a hot meal, conversation, and companionship. I'd like to thank you for your support and consideration, and we appreciate your past and future support.
So members have any questions for Mr. Theroux? Any questions for Mr. Theroux at Meals on Wheels? Thank you very much, Mr. Theroux.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Is there anyone here to speak for Safe Futures?
Hi, I'm Kathy Verano from Safe Futures, the Chief Executive Officer. How is everyone tonight?
Fine.
Thank you I will try to keep it short. So Safe Futures, during the pandemic, we're an essential agency, so all of our services were open the full time, including our court advocates in New London courts, Norwich courts, shelter, counseling, housing programs. We said when we got notice on March 16th, I think it was from Stephen Fields in New London, that we had 2 weeks and COVID would hit in southeastern Connecticut. We all said it was like a gift. We were able to install plexiglass barn doors at our shelter and our counseling areas so that we could still have face-to-face counseling sessions with children and adults for trauma-informed services. Our needs increased tremendously. We served 7,000 victims, but there were 82,600 services for those 7,000 victims. And that doesn't include the children. We count them separately. Our shelter requests increased by 716%. Again, domestic violence increased during this time. It doesn't go away and it's increasing still. Just to give you an example, the prior year from March to January, we paid an additional $12,930 in hotel costs when our shelter was full. The same period this year during COVID, March to January, $126,411. It's just mind-boggling. And we weren't able to do two of our major fundraising events. We did apply and received and was forgiven the PPP loan so that we could keep all staff on deck. We had 64 children in our shelter programs delivering food to all these hotels. Senator Formica helped us set up hotels in many different areas, including in your area. I can't tell you what ones, but due to confidentiality. But he was able to arrange discounted rates because the hotels were not receiving guests, and it helped us tremendously. And then in all of the costs, additional costs that we had to pay out, it didn't include all of the overtime for all those essential staff with the overflow of clients delivering meals every day, delivering basic needs, counseling services, So it's been a very challenging time, but I'll tell you, our community is absolutely amazing. All of the nonprofits here, everyone works together, and I can't tell you how much that helps through times like this.
Thank you very much. Do members have any questions for Safe Futures? Any questions for Safe Futures? Hearing none, thank you very much. Again, you perform a very valuable service. I'm quite frankly amazed at the number of clients you have. I feel very badly you have so many.
Thank you. Thank you for the support.
You're very welcome. Sexual Assault Crisis Center. Is there anyone to speak for the Sexual Assault Crisis Center? The Stonington Cemetery. I have their handout, which I reviewed. The Denison Pequot Seapost Nature Center. Is there anyone to speak on behalf of the Denison Pequot Seapost Nature Center?
Yes, hi. This is Davnet Schaefer here, Executive Director of the Nature Center.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. Did you say your name again?
Davnet Schaefer.
Schaefer, thank you, ma'am.
Yes, thank you for having me tonight. I will be brief. First of all, I would just like to thank the town of Stonington for their past support of the Nature Center, Danielle and Leanne, and particularly the Board of Finance here for all the work that you do. I know it's a challenge. You have in the past supported us for our wildlife rescue and rehab operation, which is what our request is for this year. However, we do have an increase, and I will just explain that in case there were any questions. There were an increase because we have added funding for our Giving Garden, which we provide fresh produce to the Gemma E. Moran Food Bank through the United Way. This past year, we had a significant reduction in the produce that we were able to grow from a high of 16,000 pounds in one season down to about 5,000 pounds this year. Mainly that was due to COVID restrictions on our ability to have volunteers and staff working together in the Giving Garden. So we had a significant reduction. As many of the other people providing similar services here have mentioned, there is an increased need and expected increased need throughout the next year. We were informed that the food pantry served an average of 212 individuals per month in the town of Stonington last year, but during 2020, during the pandemic, participation was high as 107 individuals in a single day from the town of Stonington through the food pantry. And both before and during the pandemic, it has been noted that without contributions from the Nature Center's Giving Garden, on many days there would have been no mobile food pantry without the produce that we have provided. So really a critical need for our town and something that we're continuing to work to expand. It is our priority for this year to bring our production back up to what it was previously, so we can also help to meet that need for human services in the town of Stoning through what we do at the Nature Center property. So I just very much appreciate the support that the town has given the Nature Center in many different ways, and I appreciate your consideration of our requests this year.
Ma'am, you were unable to have a growing season last year, or your production was way down. How is this additional increase going to help grow more food?
Well, one of the ways that we are working this year is we are working to secure a Giving Garden assistant for our farm manager. And that way we are able to host volunteers 7 days a week to improve our growing, our planting, and therefore our production and harvest. So it's really a staffing issue, but also material costs to help us grow the food, because all the food is donated free of charge. So that's something that really the Nature Center does not have a direct line of revenue for, but that we do provide to the community.
Okay. Members have any questions for Ms. Schaefer? Any questions for the Nature Center?
before you go on, we inadvertently missed New London homeless hospitality.
Homeless hospitality. Oh, yeah, I skipped over that. Does anyone speak? Oh, the
Yeah.
New London Homeless Hospitality Center?
Yeah, this is Kathy.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
You hear me?
Could you say your
Kathy
name
Zoll.
again?
Kathy
Kathy
Zoll,
Holmes?
Z-A-L-L.
Okay, Kathy Doll. Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks. So I'll just be very brief. First, I just want to thank the town of Stonington, who are partners in addressing homelessness, far beyond the size of the town, and really have been really key partners in the eastern region. So at the Homeless Hospitality Center, we provide a regional resource for emergency shelter. It's much more effective to have a regional resource as opposed to each town trying to provide for emergency shelter. So we appreciate the partnership of the town of Stonington and continue to be open, obviously, throughout the pandemic. And we look forward to continuing to work to make homelessness, as we say, rare, brief, and non-recurring. So thank you very much for your support.
You're very welcome. Members have any questions for Ms. Dahl? The London Homeless Hospitality Center, any questions? Okay, hearing none. Ocean Community Chamber of Commerce. Foundation? Is there anyone online for that? Okay, hearing none. The Stanton Davis Homestead? Is there anyone here to speak for the Stanton Davis Homestead? Okay, we'll go by that one. The Stonington Ambulance Corps.
Yes. Hi, Nishan Sahu, Vice President. I am going to try to share my screen here.
I printed out your handout.
Okay, great. I think it's up on the screen for everybody else. Is that right?
Yeah, that'll be great. You've done well. You're a techno wizard.
Okay. All right. So I'll get started here. Obviously, there's a lot of data in this presentation, so I'll just go over at a high level to keep to the 3-minute time. Starting on the operations overview, the only piece I'll point out is that we've averaged about 570 911 calls over the last 2 years. That includes a decrease in 2020. Important to note, about 1/3 of these calls are actually mutual aid to our partners, Mystic River and Westerly Ambulance. If I go to the next slide, that is the proposed EMS agreement with the town of Stonington. This is still in deliberation, nothing is finalized, but in its current form, it does involve an annual cost of about $1,000 just to increase our insurance increase our insurance coverage to the requirements laid out in the contract. It also calls for 24/7 coverage for staffing, which I have a separate slide on how we'll talk about that being financially pretty difficult for both us and the town. Going into the financials overview, if we look at the trend, starting in 2019, things look pretty good for us, but then in 2020, you can see how this top line drops pretty significantly. And then looking in 2021, we're staying pretty conservative with our outlook. And actually anticipating even more of a decrease. If we incorporate the request from the town, which is a little bit higher than what's in the packet, it is 74 is our request, and incorporate the increase in expenses, which I will go over, you can see that we're still estimating a deficit. So again, with the increase we are requesting, we are estimating a deficit in 2021. If I look at that top line, what is causing us to decrease our revenue, starting is a decrease in call volume in 2020. You can see that we were down just under 6% in call volume, but what really hit us was the reimbursement rate. You can see we were operating just over 50%. Last year it was above 40%. So bottom line to us, it was about a 25% drop. We also saw almost a $14,400 increase in write-offs, which is big for our organization. But then going to the big piece of our request, It's the increase due to staffing. We run a paid shift program. It covers about 36% of the week. However, it covers about 46% of our calls. So it's an effective program in just the way that it's set up. However, in December of last year, we had to make the decision to increase the per point, which is basically an hourly rate, from $12 to $17. If you account for holiday pay, that added about $33,000 in expenses to costs. Please trust me when I say this, and we can go into all the detail. This was our last effort to fill our shifts. We had tried everything for years, since 2016 when we introduced this program, to try to fill this with volunteers so we wouldn't have to pay such a high rate. Unfortunately, the $17 number came from neighboring agencies. That's what they're offering their employees. And so thankfully it has been successful since we moved to this rate. We're able to take in new members and cover our shifts, which we know are vital to keep our response to Stonington. But that 33,000 plus the 1,000 increase in our insurance expense is what is leading to our $34,000 increase to $74,000 this coming year. Just quickly touching on that 24/7 coverage down here, you can see that that would cost the town hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's an increase over what it costs right now. That means moving to a payroll system. We currently are on a contractor basis, and a lot of other details. So again, we're happy to work with the town if you'd like to do this, but obviously very expensive. So with that, I'll pause for questions.
Do members have any questions for the ambulance corps? This is a big increase in the ask, obviously. And I know there's pressure on your agency and every EMS type agency to get volunteers. Members have any questions? No questions for the ambulance corps? Okay, I'm going to ask you and invite you to come to the public hearing, because I think that the residents need to hear this. Have you as an organization thought of merging with, because you have a small primary response area. You stated in your handout, you have a very small service area. Would it make sense for your board of directors to consider merging with one of the two other and divide up the area between two?
Just to make sure I understand your question, do you mean dissolve our organization and allow Mystic River and Westerly to take over those?
Split the service area between the two other serving agencies, Wesley and Mystic River. So then you have looking for volunteers, three.
Right, and it certainly in theory sounds like it would work. You know, I would go back to one of the first items I mentioned, that 1/3 of our call volume as it stands is to our neighboring agencies. So the first thing I would say is, you know, I would suggest talking to both Mystic River and Westerly about taking on that additional call volume. Because we're right in the middle and we provide that service to both of them, plus we cover our own district, that type of relationship would be more difficult than us just splitting that call volume between the two. As it stands, we're covering their second due and third due calls, depending on what time of day or how many crews they have on. This would most likely incorporate having an additional staff or an additional crew on at all times, which again, when we look at the numbers that I just presented as to what 24/7 coverage would cost, it most likely would be very expensive and not, again, feasible. So, you know, but again, I would run that by Mystic River and Westerly, you know, to see what their thoughts are as well. But from our perspective, financially speaking, we don't necessarily think that it would save the town any money. It might actually make it more expensive.
Well, thank you very much. You know, it's a very difficult time for every volunteer organization. Are there any other questions from members for the Stonington Ambulance Corps? Okay. Moving on, Mystic River Ambulance. Is there anyone to speak for Mystic River Ambulance?
Good evening. This is Ray Munn here, Vice President.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. Yes, I wanted to introduce myself as Vice President serving now. Also online tonight here is Michael Gilman, the President. Our mission is serving for EMS services in Stonington and Groton. primarily about 1/3 of the town of Stonington, and then maybe 1/3 of the town of Groton as well. The organization wants to extend our appreciation to you all for your continued support from Stonington over the years. It's been something we depend on. While our billing rates cover our operational costs, day-to-day operational costs, and our fundraising, when we do need special equipment, we go to special fundraising efforts, and we use that to cover those equipment expenses. We haven't had to do that for the past couple of years, however. But the big thing is the town grants we depend on for the fundamental ability to provide the EMS services. That is the infrastructure, the building that we have, and the fixed costs that we have there, non-operational costs, and the ambulances themselves. A big additional item this past year, as you could expect, is the preparation for COVID response. We take very seriously, of course, the safety of our crews and of our patients. And this is a big cost in time. Run times, an average run time now is about 2 hours for a crew, extended from about an hour and a half before the preparation was required that COVID brought on. The safety for crews is the fundamental thing. And so these costs are added. We spent probably looks like about $12,500 last year for COVID, and we're anticipating a greater number this year, primarily because some of the subsidies that we received from the state for COVID equipment has been or likely being withdrawn at this point. The budget overall is approximately the same. Our expenses are roughly level. We have our changes in that are we've increased our apparatus and equipment expenses. Some of the equipment we have we've retired the loans we had on those, fortunately, and the CPR machines, stretcher upgrades, and so on. And we've decided to decrease our monthly contribution to our new ambulance fund to keep our budget in line as best we can. We still come out with a deficit budget, and this is something that we don't like to see, but we have to plan for, and that's even with the increased contributions that we've requested from both the towns of Groton and Stonington. The increase in the budget, the increase inside the budget, is that we've added one full-time employee. As you probably remember, we have full-time paid staff and we have per diem paid staff, and largely for evenings, overnights, and weekends are volunteers. The per diem staff we rely on. It's a great asset for the way we do business. The need for a third full-time EMT was realized when the per diem hours they can work and so on is rather flexible. There's some turnover in staff, but the hours they can put in to work is variable. So we have to maintain that steady staffing. So we have overall we have 3 full-time EMTs, 1 full-time administrator / EMT, and we have 6 per diems who fill in some of the hours during the work week. The other additional expense is, as I mentioned before, the COVID expense, and is anticipated to continue into fiscal year 22. That concludes what I have. I'd be welcome. I'm sure Michael would be as well to answer questions.
Do members have any questions for the ambulance corps from Mr. Kriver? Any questions from Mr. Kriver Ambulance? Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate your speaking with us tonight.
Good evening.
Wesley Ambulance. Is there anyone to speak for Wesley Ambulance?
Yes, this is Wesley Ambulance. Ron McDonald III, President.
Good evening. Mr. McDonald, what do you want to tell us?
Good evening. Thank you for having us. Just a few quick points. This past year we've had severe impact with the COVID-19, just like all the other ambulance services, with decreased call volume. Overall call volume loss for us for both towns, Wesley and Stonington, was 1,342. Some of that was lost calls, obviously, from the summer 911 type calls, and also a decrease in calls out of the Wesley Hospital because we do routine and interfacility transports. Just in Stonington from 2019 to 2020, it was a 35 call loss. 29 of those were billable transports. So in 2020, we did 939 calls. 2019, we did 974. This year, we're already starting $100,000 in the red. Last year, we lost a substantial amount of income, like I said before. So we have no capital expenses this year. We decreased our budget to bare bones. We realize that all the towns are in financial distress because of the pandemic. So we asked for a slight increase in our budget this year. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has them. And thank you.
Any questions for Mr. McDonald, Wesley Ambulance Corps? Hearing none, Mr. McDonald, thank you very much. I appreciate your brevity and your concise report.
Thank you and have a good night. Appreciate it. All the support the town of Stonington gives us.
You're very welcome. That concludes the outside agencies. The next budget meeting
is the Stonington Historical Society is on. They might be in this part of the outside agencies.
I'm looking.
The general operating.
I'm looking under outside agencies, and I'm not seeing Stonington. Oh, let's see what they have. I don't. Where's their?
In the SIP.
Oh, it's SIP.
SIP. Secret SIP account. Sorry,
hidden away.
I think Elizabeth is on.
Yes, there's the Stonington Historical Society. On line 117. Is there someone online to speak for the Stonington Historical Society?
Oh, Leah said she might have just disconnected. She was on.
When you say Leanne, you're talking about Leanne Theodore?
Sorry, she's texting me. So Elizabeth Wood from the Historical Society was on, but I think she just left. I think she maybe thought she missed her chance.
Oh.
I'm here. Actually, I am here.
She's back.
Oh,
I'm
good.
here.
Okay.
So, yeah, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. It's a privilege to be here among all these incredibly accomplished organizations and to hear about the impact they have on our community. So thank you. I have just returned as the executive director of the Stonington Historical Society after about 1.5 years away. I don't have any prepared comments. I really came to just see if you have any questions for me this evening. So thank you.
Okay. You have a request in for $50,000. And what
Holy shit. This is the third. The initial request was for $50,000 for each year for 3 years to create. We had a project that restored the old Lighthouse Museum and would create.
Lighthouse restoration. Yes. And how is that coming?
It's the first phase has been completed. The total restoration of the lighthouse proper has been done. Inside and out. They took it down to the bare studs and replaced all the beams and structural components. We hope to embark on the second phase of this in the fall. That will be the construction of a new visitor center that will be an addition on the rear of the building. It will create universal access to the building and the property. It includes handicap parking and accessible walkways and a visitor center that will help us to preserve the building itself, as well as climate control for the artifacts within it.
Okay, how has your private fundraising been doing?
We have raised over $1 million to date. We have about another $1 million to raise. And the support of the town of Stonington would go a long way, and we would be able to leverage that for additional support from residents from the town of Stonington. This is really an iconic structure that means something to virtually everyone in town. and it is also an economic anchor and draws visitors to the borough of Stonington, who then proceed to shop in local businesses, to eat in local restaurants, and stay in local hotels.
Do members have any questions for the Historical Society, for Elizabeth? Hearing none, I'll say thank you very much, and we'll be talking about this during our deliberations. Thank you very much. Now, I think that concludes it. Is there anything else I might have missed?
Maybe do a quick check.
Quick check. Is there anyone online who wishes to speak towards an item for an outside agency?
I think you may have missed the VNA of Southeastern Connecticut.
VNA.
Clarify, it's line 47, public health and nursing.
Public health and nursing. 47. There you are. Public health and nursing. Who am I speaking with?
Okay, this is Gail Hayshe. I'm the interim director of the agency. I've actually stepped in since Mary Lanzini retired at the end of December after 39 years at the agency.
Wow.
Long time. So it's been quite an interesting year for us as well at the VNA due to COVID. You know, we have been taking care of many COVID patients in the community. And as well, we have seen an increase in the demand for providing subsidized and free care. So in the last year, we actually did not do as many clinics as we generally would in a regular year. We actually came in way under budget in the last year for clinics. But on the other side, for health promotion, you know, providing care to the indigent, we actually went over due to the need. In the last year, we also serviced 224 Stonington residents, mostly subsidized care, which includes skilled nursing, therapy services, and home health aid. So I am not sure if anyone has any questions of us, but we certainly enjoy meeting the needs of the residents in Stonington and appreciate your support to help us in our mission.
Are there any questions for the visiting nurses of Southeastern Connecticut? Hearing none, thank you very much, ma'am, for
Thank you.
speaking of an agency. Is there anybody else online that I might have skipped? Any of the agencies? Then I think a motion to adjourn would be in order. And I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second for that? Sounded like Lynn.
It was.
It was. And who's going to second that motion?
I'll second. Bob Stachin.
There we go. Thank you, Bob. Everyone have a wonderful evening.
Bye, everybody.
Thank
Good
you.
night. Jim, you still on?
Yeah, yes, I am.